Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
Everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News, 250 plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM listing nearest you, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch and save pay an average of $699 less per year. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Had a good game. Had a couple of good games last night, Monday Night Football. That's one thing I want to get into. I'll get into the Jets and the Giants and the Rams and the Chargers and obviously several other teams of what I saw from the NFL Sunday and Monday. But when I think about last night's game, a couple of games, by the way, I was pretty surprised and happy at what I saw. I didn't expect Houston. I did not expect the Houston Texans to be as competitive as they were. I really, really didn't. This kid, Deshaun Watson, just continues to amaze me. I mean, when you think about the fact last night was his 9th regular season loss of his career, okay, in his 3 years in the National Football League. This is a guy that the average margin of losses in those games was 4 points. 4 points. This is what Deshaun Watson does. This is what he's all about. He was a winner at Clemson. And I can't deny that he's a winner in Houston. They may not win a championship, but damn it, it ain't his fault. Because time and time again, when pressed against the wall and asked to rise to the occasion and respond, Deshaun Watson does exactly that. Last night, when all was said and done, he finished 20 of 30, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, was sacked 6 times. Finished with a 114.3 passer rating. Completed about 66% of his passes. Now, obviously, he wasn't Drew Brees because how many people are Drew Brees? 32 of 43, 370 yards. Drew Brees stepped back in the pocket, and based on the pass rush that the Houston Texans didn't have, couldn't touch the quarterback. Dropped back in the pocket, called the wife and kids, told him when he'd be home, asked for what he'd want for dinner and whatever. I mean, he was doing everything. I mean, talk about being in a comfort zone. But this is the kind of stuff that Drew Brees had at his disposal last night. I didn't expect much from the Houston Texans because, quite frankly, I didn't look at them as that great of a team. I know they're good. Deshaun Watson is a baller. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the top 3 receivers in the world as far as I'm concerned. Man doesn't drop passes. Didn't drop a single pass last year. Didn't drop a single pass. And had about 115 receptions. Didn't drop a single pass. This dude is something special. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I just say to myself, look, man, you can't ignore what you get from Houston. You got to be surprised because Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson are your dual threat at the running back spot, particularly now that Lamar Miller is out for the year. You know, he got injured. And so because he had injured and you had to go out there and make a deal and have a running back by committee, these guys play well. I mean, Carlos Hyde had 83 yards on 10 rushes and had a 20-yard run. Duke Johnson rushed for 57 yards on 9 carries, had a 32-yard run. You got to give credit where credit is due. Offensively, behind, what do? Deshaun Watson, less than a minute left, connects with DeAndre Hopkins. Then after that, connects with newly acquired wide receiver Kenny Stills from the Miami Dolphins. They take a 28-27 lead. Oh, by the way, the damn kicker missed the extra point. But a roughing the kicker penalty was implemented. They got a second crack at it. They made the extra point. They go up 28-27. They give Drew Brees the football with about 37 seconds left. You need 35 yards. 35 yards to be in position to kick a field goal. What does Drew Brees get in 3 completions? 35 yards. It's what he does. He's Drew Brees. So when you look at it from that perspective, whether it's Michael Thomas, it was Ted Ginn Jr., it didn't matter. Drew Brees going to find whoever he needed to find. That's what he does. It would have been nice to see Houston's defense be able to do something. If you remember, last regular season in Philadelphia, Deshaun Watson leads another comeback, and all you need is this defense to get a stop, and you preserve the victory, and that is that. They couldn't stop it. They lost that game to the Philadelphia Eagles after Deshaun Watson brought him back. Last night, same thing. Instead of being against Nick Foles, who was with the Eagles at the time, this time it's against Drew Brees. You get the lead, and your defense can't hold. And I got to tell you something right now. I'm not a person that usually looks at somebody like the defensive coordinator and point fingers. I'm thinking everything starts with the head man. That's how I'm looking at it. That's exactly how I'm looking at it. But I got to tell you something right now. Romeo Crennel is the defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. The man is 72 years old. We all know he wasn't a great head coach in his 6 complete years in Cleveland and Kansas City. As a head coach, he was 28-55. That's a 33% winning percentage. That ain't cutting it. But religiously, he has been ballyhooed and recognized at the very least as a damn good coordinator. I got to tell you something. Starting to wonder. You're in Houston, okay? You are in Houston. You've been a defensive coordinator for quite some time. He was a defensive coordinator in Cleveland in 2000. I'm looking at his resume right here. He was a defensive coordinator in New England, 2001 through 2004. We know he won a couple of Super Bowls there, okay? You go back to being a defensive coordinator in Kansas City before you were the head coach. Then you went back to being a defensive coordinator. And you stayed there until arriving in Houston in 2014. And now you've been in Houston the last 5 years. Romeo Crennel has been around too long. You need a stop. I know it's Drew Brees that you're going against. You got to figure that out. You got to figure it out. That didn't happen, and as a result, Houston lost. I got New Orleans going to the Super Bowl before the season even began, coming out of the NFC. It's not going to be easy, but I'm not betting against Brees in New Orleans. I'm just not. Not this time. Not 2 years in a row. I don't see that. As for Houston, I will admit this. Deshaun Watson does give you cause to pause. The brother's sensational. He can run with the football. He can pass with the football. He was being examined by doctors throughout the evening because of his back ailments, because he was getting popped silly. Got sacked 6 times. Got hit 11 times. New Orleans was all over him. No question about it. All true. But I got to tell you something. Despite the fact that they were all over him, he kept coming, man. He kept coming. Deshaun Watson got a lot of heart, obviously tremendous skill. And if I'm the Chicago Bears, I'm sick to my stomach. I not only passed on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, I actually moved up in the draft to get Mitchell Trubisky. I don't understand that one. I got to admit it. I really, really do. Deshaun Watson is something special. They got a quarterback in Houston, man. He's only 24 years of age. They got a quarterback in Houston, no doubt about it. And they got some talent, too. I can't underestimate them. But it appears losing Jadeveon Clowney and ultimately trading him to Seattle is not a plus. J.J. Watt, talk about a no-show last night. Where the hell was he? No sacks, no tackles, no assists. I'm just looking. I don't see anything. I watched some of the game. Didn't see anything. I am wondering. Somebody's got to say it. I mean, it was an ofro. When is the last time you seen that with J.J. Watt? Humanitarian extraordinaire, former multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. We know how big time he is. I ain't used to seeing that from J.J. Watt. I'm not used to seeing T.J. Watt be more recognizable than his big brother J.J. I'm not used to that. So there's a lot of things to address today. No question about it. But I will tell you this. It's one game. Houston should be excited. They really, really should. Because Deshaun Watson and his history and his talent and his heart all show losing ain't going to be a continuous thing as long as he's behind center. I'm telling you that right now. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. That was just the first game that I wanted to get into. The second game, you could sit up there and easily say that the story of this game was Derek Carr. When you look at Derek Carr, you recognize the fact that this is a guy who nobody questions the talent. Nobody questions the arm strength, the accuracy. I mean, you know what he can do. He can fling that football down. The question that you had about Derek Carr was whether or not he could be consistent. That's still a question mark. Because last night's game against Denver, it's just one game. But here is where it absolutely positively gets interesting. He was sensational last night. 22 or 26. That's an 84.6% completion percentage. Just 259 yards, a touchdown, not a single interception.